Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. I guess I have two speakers today, which is great. Hey, first off, I just want to thank everyone for coming in. I hope that it wasn't a problem getting here. We know that we had a little confusion with directions, so we apologize for that, but we're just really excited for everyone to be here today. Before we start off, I just want to let everyone know that we have resources in the back. So we have different resources. So to start off with, if anyone just wants their online resources, this is standing up back there. You can scan this QR code and it goes directly to our online folder that has all of our resources online. To go over some other resources, today we'll be talking about the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant Program Guide, the OHV Recreation Grant Program Guide, and then some of our federal grants. Land and Water Conservation Fund, which can be found here in our Recreational Trails Program. And then also in the back, we do have snacks and drinks. If you're interested in finding a bathroom, if you head out these doors and head left, you'll see them down the hall. What else?
Who are you?
Haha, thank you. So today we are the Division of Outdoor Recreation, and we are from the Grants and Planning team, and we will be talking about all of the grants that we have available within our division. Today we'll have microphones because this is going to be recorded. So let's say you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll come to you and hand you a microphone to ask that question. Again, just so that we can get it on the recording, so when we post this online, if there's other questions that people might have that are being answered, we don't have to repeat it in our online recording. Okay. So before I get into anything, I just want to introduce our team. So the majority of the people that are here today are actually in this room, which is awesome. So today you'll be hearing from a number of us, but as many of you probably know, our team kind of really started out with Tara McKee. She's not in here right now, but she's probably a familiar face to a lot of you. And then we also have Evan, who's in the back. He'll be talking about our federal grants. Patrick Morrison is here today. He has gone on this grant tour a number of times. Right now he's working on a different project, but he still assists with our grants. Then we have Maureen Casper in the room. She's back there. If you ever receive an email from her, it's regarding contracts. And if you have any contract questions today, she can answer those for you. Next up, we have Caroline. Caroline oversees our Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant and a number of other grants. Carly Lanch, who I believe is also here today, she'll be talking about ORPA, and our planning assistant. She is our recreation planner. And then lastly, my name is Rachel Toker. I oversee the OHV Recreation Grant. But in addition to that, we also have Jason Curry, who is our director. Okay. So I know some people are still coming in, but today this is what's on our agenda. We're going to be doing a quick DOR overview, some general stuff, then we'll go into some grant information, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of our grants. So Caroline will start us off with our grants. She'll talk about UORG and UCOR. Again, we'll go through all these acronyms in a little bit. And then I'll talk about our OHV, or OVR, Recreation Grant. Evan will speak on our federal grants, which are LWCF and RTP. And then we'll finish up with Carly talking about our planning assistance and some tips for our future applicants. But before we get into things, by a raise of hands, I was just kind of want to get a feel for who's in the room today. So especially if there are some specific questions, let's say federally, we know who to direct them to. So who in the crowd is here representing a federal agency? Nice. Okay. What about a state agency? Okay, some state people. Any nonprofits? Awesome. Okay, any elected officials, staff, or, okay, 1, 2, exciting. Okay, county. City or towns out there? Okay. Any tribal? Okay. Education? Institutions? Okay. And then private sectors. All right, so we have a lot of people from nonprofits and cities and towns, which we're excited about. Hopefully we'll be able to answer everyone's questions throughout this. Again, if you have any questions as we go through this, just raise your hand and we'll walk over to you with a microphone. But now we're going to delve into things. So, what is the Division of Outdoor Recreation? The Division of Outdoor Recreation has been around for approximately a year. We originally, well, I myself came from the Division of State Parks when it was known as State Parks and Recreation. And then Caroline and Patrick, they actually came from the Office of Outdoor Recreation. So, the state parks, it housed some grants, and then Office of Outdoor Recreation housed other grants. And it didn't really make sense that we were divided because we deal in a lot of the same areas. So what they did a couple years ago is they separated recreation out from state parks, and then they merged us with the Office of Outdoor Recreation under the Department of Natural Resources to become the Division of Outdoor Recreation. So that's who we are today. We began with approximately 11 employees. We've gone through, we had a director and then he left us and we were straggling for a bit and struggling, but now we have Jason here who's really kind of picked up and brought us together as a team. But again, we started out with approximately 11 people, and now we're growing as a division, and we have about 44 people, and we're always hiring new ones. We just put out a position yesterday for a new employee. So we like to think that we're assisting others where they need help. But what we do really work and focus on is our boating program. We have an off-highway vehicle program. We have a number of Every Kid Outdoor initiatives. We have a grants and planning team, who you see in front of you today. That is who we are, or who I am, and some of my coworkers. And then lastly, we have law enforcement. Our law enforcement rangers are based all throughout the state to help different state entities, federal entities, those kind of things, towns, cities. They help out where they need to be. So this is who we are as a division. Today we're going to be talking about a number of grants. So we have state grants and federal grants. Our state grants, as many of you know, is the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant. That acronym is UORG. We also have the Recreation Restoration Infrastructure Grant, known as RRI. We have the Utah Children's Outdoor Recreation and Education Grant. This is known as UCORE. And then to kind of close that off with these are all under UORG, and the last addition to that is the Utah Outdoor Classroom Grant. And then we have the OHV Recreation Grant, known as OVER. And lastly, this is a grant, but there is no funding exchange. Pretty much you apply for the grant and you receive one of our employees' time and expertise when it comes to planning. That is our Outdoor Recreation Planning Assistance, known as ORPA. On to the federal grants we'll be talking about today. We have the Recreational Trails Program Grant, which is known as RTP. And then we have Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is known as LWCF. So before I pass the torch to my coworker, Caroline, I just want to go over some things that people should be aware of before they apply. So eligible entities, and I went around the room earlier today, and it seems that everyone's eligible. If you have any questions about your eligibility, please come and talk to one of us. But our eligible entities are cities, county, state, federal agencies, tribal governments, 501c3s, and educational institutions. With all of our grants, you have 3 opportunities when it comes to receiving the funding. So let's say you're applying for something, but you're worried about how you're going to pay for it. We offer 3 different solutions to help you. Our first one, and the one that we like to see the most of, is that all of our grants are reimbursed. So let's say you receive funding and you have the funding available for you to do it, for you to pay for the project. Ideally, we would like you to complete the project and then come to us for funding or reimbursement. But we understand that doesn't work for everyone, so we've put 2 other opportunities out there when it comes to funding. Our second grant reimbursement opportunity is that when you apply for something, you pay for it up front, and then you need more money, so you come back, you get it reimbursed, and you come back time and time again for reimbursements throughout your project. And lastly, something new that we're doing is we allow for upfront funding. So all of our grants allow for up to 75% of the funding up front, and I want to emphasize up to. If you have a need to get the ball rolling, so let's say you need $50,000 to purchase equipment, what you would do for that is you send us in receipts, invoices, bids, etc. We take a look at those and then we give you the funding up front to pay for those large items. When it comes to that, we do want to make sure that that funding is being expended within a 6-month time frame. So I got a little ahead of myself there, but reimbursements are a big part of what I do. So, but getting back to things to know before you apply. All of our grants have matching requirements, which can consist of cash and in-kind donation. All of our grants have different funding thresholds as well as matching requirements, so please be aware of that. We'll go through them closely today. But if you have any questions or need more information, please take a look at our program guides. They have a lot of helpful information. And then lastly, work cannot begin until a contract is in place. So let's say you have a project in mind and you're wanting to apply, but you've already made a number of purchases towards that project. I don't want it to deter you from applying because we can still pay for aspects of the project, but any work or funding that's taken place before a contract is in place with our entity, we are unable to reimburse or consider it matching funds. So please keep that in mind when you apply for these projects. So again, these are just some things to know before you begin applying. So if you're wondering about eligibility, matching, reimbursements, and contracts, this is where you get that information. Are there any questions before I pass this over to Caroline to get into the nitty-gritty of things? Okay.
Well, hi everybody and good morning. I'm so sorry if I sent you on a wild goose chase to the fairgrounds. That was my fault. Hopefully you enjoyed a corn dog and some popcorn over there before you came over here. My name is Caroline Weiler. I've been with the division since we formed last July. I was an intern under the grateful, watchful eyes of Patrick and Tara over in the Office of Outdoor Recreation. Super excited to be here with you today and talk about the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant. If you are familiar with this grant, you've known Patrick Morrison for a couple years now, and I'm trying to fill some big shoes there with his grateful oversight in this project. So we'll talk about the nitty-gritty here. Just to give you an idea about what this program and this grant opportunity did in the last year, in 2023, we gave out $16 million to projects throughout the state. Over 92 projects were awarded with this funding, with a total project cost of $80 million. So really cool to see with this program alone, we funded over $80 million worth of recreational assets into the state just last year. 500 new jobs were supported through this. 25 different counties received funding. We'd love to see that be a 29 even number each and every year. 23 different recreational activity types were funded through this program. Really cool to see that Utah's diversifying what they think recreation is. So that's exciting to see new and exciting projects each and every year. We really try to pride ourselves in being equitable with our funding throughout the state. So if it's a rural county or an urban county, we try to award equitably throughout the state. Last year, our numbers skewed just a bit because Washington County became urban, as you know. So we dropped a little bit to the 44% there. But we do try to do a 50-50 split each year. We had $21 million in requests come in. So you can see that it is a competitive program with potentially $5 million of really good projects not being able to get funded just last year. We do anticipate this threshold going up this year, probably in the $20 million range of money that we can give out. So it's exciting to see that we're going to have more money each year to promote recreation throughout the state. And then a fun fact that I love, 152 miles were formed for through this grant just last year. Okay, if you've been to our workshops in the last year probably, we gave you like a laundry list of new and exciting things to talk about with this. We think things are running fairly smoothly now, so there's not a ton of new information. Some of this will be a lot of repeat for you veterans of the program. But some of the new things that we are introducing is new eligible applicants. So federal and state agencies were only eligible to apply for the restoration grant in previous years. This year, we're opening all of the UORG classifications to federal and state agencies. So hopefully that kind of streamlines some process. I know that in the past, maybe a city is the applicant, but the federal partner is doing a brunt of the share of the work. So at this point, it just makes sense to have them be the applicant themselves and do the recording and tracking. So that's something that we are excited about. And that's for all UORG Tier 1, Regional Mini Grant, Outdoor Classroom, and the Children's Grant that we'll touch on today. All right, to talk about the tiers of this, basically this means the thresholds that you can apply for. We have 3 different categories. The regional asset tier, as the name would imply, is for regional assets to the state of Utah. We'd hope to see people coming in from maybe out of your county or out of state even to come and explore something creative that you have put in. For an urban county, we want these to be $3 million or more projects, so well overmatched. If you come from a rural county, a one-to-one match is sufficient, so $1.5 million project will be just fine to be eligible. Again, this is for new recreational projects, so we'll talk about restoration here in a minute, but anything new, this is the category to apply for. All of our funding comes from the transient room tax and some portion of sales tax, so we want to see this going back into that cycle. You're driving tourism and economic benefit to your community by building these projects. One qualification that we do have with this is that you come and present to the scoring committee. This meeting takes place at the end of April. We have a fantastic committee made up of representatives and stakeholders in recreation throughout the state. They meet together and evaluate these. None of our staff is actually the determining factor about your projects, but they go through an official meeting and process. So we want, if you apply for the regional asset tier, that you come and present to that meeting, get your face in front of the committee, whether virtually or in person, give a 5-minute presentation, tell us what your program is, and have some Q&A there with the committee. The tier 1 is kind of our bread and butter here. $15,000 to $200,000 can go a long way when thinking about recreational assets. For the tier 1, we do have a county-based matching component, so we'll touch on that later, but based on your county, you will have a different requirement of what your match must be. Again, economic and tourism benefit for these. The mini grant is just a small grant that we've created as we saw people needing just a small influx of cash. The application for this isn't quite as competitive. It's a pretty streamlined process. We fund a majority of the mini grants that we get each year if it's a good project. A one-to-one matching component is available here. So if you ask for $15,000, we'd expect $15,000 from you. If your total project is only $15,000, maybe you ask for $7,500 and we come in with the other half. All right, we'll touch on some activities that UARK can fund, but first I'll touch on things that we cannot fund because I think that's an easier place to start. We can't do anything that involves a ball is basically an easy way to put it. We can't do sport courts, fields. We won't help with playground equipment, so your coveted monkey bars and swing sets, we cannot help with this. We do have other funding opportunities that Evan will touch on later on that he thinks are better, but they're just different. So if you need a playground or a pickleball court or a pool, those 3 Ps, look for Evan in a few minutes here. But this is for your traditional recreation infrastructure projects. So perhaps you're putting in a new campground, platforms for tents, fire rings, a fishing dock or access to a river, nature enjoyment if you're building like a blind or something to view wildlife. We do fund motorized with this grant. Rachel will touch on her grant, which is all things motorized. So that might be a better place to go if you need motorized recreation. But we do fund trails and things for motorized activity as well. We can help with disc golf courses, ropes courses. We do all sorts of canyoneering and climbing activities as well. Outdoor climbing. Shooting activities have been big this last year. We've put in some archery ranges, shooting ranges. All sorts of snow activities if you need grooming equipment or snowmaking equipment, ice skating, outdoor obviously. This is again all outdoor recreation based. Trail activities, anything from trail running, mountain biking, and horseback riding. Again, we cannot purchase the equipment to do these activities, so we couldn't help you pay for bikes or horses, but we can help you put in trails for those activities. And then all sorts of water activities and then wheeled sports. We can help put in pump tracks or skate parks, very popular items this year. All right, just to give you some examples, maybe get some wheels spinning for projects that you might be looking forward to. Richfield City, the Pavant Trails down in Sevier County, they've done an amazing job. We funded multiple phases of this project. If you're a mountain biker, I'd encourage you to get down there and check them out. They're amazing. It's cool to see that that community has diversified from strictly motorized recreation to non-motorized recreation now. They're seeing such a high demand that they're coming back to us and saying, we need a trailhead, an official, more signage, a toilet, things like that. So really cool to see that. We were in Logan just on Monday talking about this really cool project up there in Cache County. This was awarded just this past year in the regional asset category. Again, this is that $750,000 threshold. They repurposed their old landfill in town, so it was, an expired landfill, and instead of letting it sit dormant, they're deciding to put a recreation complex on the property, complete with trails and putting in a pond. I think they're going after some other funding for the pickleball courts and things like that out of UORG, but really cool to see this giant project come together in a unique place in the town. Mini grants, again, that $15,000 limit. We funded a Green Canyon Winter Trail Grooming Equipment project up in Cache County as well. This is a popular trail if you've been up there, Green Canyon. It's crawling with people during the summer, and thanks to this snow dog, they're calling it, they groom the trail, pack down the snow for mountain bikers and hikers to enjoy it all year long. And then disc golf course has been all the rage lately, it seems. We're putting in disc golf courses all throughout the state. This one just happens to be down in Utah County in the city of Lehigh. And then Tier 1, this is, again, that $15,000 to $200,000 range, county-based matching component. Ophir Ropes course from the Tooele Education Center. I went up this summer and took this picture. It's amazing. The Ophir Canyon area doesn't have a ton of recreation assets currently, and so the Tooele Education Center put in a bunch of yurts that they're doing outdoor and indoor education in, as well as this really cool ropes course. So they're bringing in high school students from across the county to come and test their skills at new heights. Really fun to see. Ephraim is doing a bunch of cool work. I was just talking with someone yesterday from the city that they put in all these really cool downhill mountain bike trails, and they might come back this year and ask for some, new features there with some jumps and things like that. But a really cool, awesome project down in Ephraim. I think they put in 10 to 12 new miles of downhill trail there. And then we were up in Manaway on Monday as well, talking to the small and mighty community there. They put in this winter wonderland, they're calling it. It's a sledding hill. There's a skate park adjacent to it. A ice skating park next to it. And a really cool example from Manaway is it's a small community with maybe not a ton of cash to put into a project, so they relied heavily on their community. We were standing there on the hill, and the sponsor of the grant was pointing at 5 or 6 different houses saying, he donated the asphalt, this neighbor is donating lighting, they're putting in our skate rink. So think about this, think about partners. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but how can you leverage your dollars to stretch through the people that you know in your communities? Oh, and then I forgot to mention Washington Wheels Park down in Washington City, massive skate park, pump track for all things wheels down there. All right, any questions about the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant and specifics before I move to restoration? We'll be around here for questions at any point if you have them as well. So, again, all the things I've mentioned are for bright, shiny, new projects. The Recreation Restoration Infrastructure Grant, RRI, is for restoring old recreation assets that you might already have. This is not for your annual maintenance. We're not expecting this to go towards, and it won't be allowed to go towards, things like filling in cracks or doing some typical trail work that might be done annually. This is for big restoration projects that are needed to repair and restore loved recreational assets. So obviously this past winter we saw record snowfall. Maybe you have some trails that need a total revamp, relift, realignment. This could be something that we could help you with that. We can restore old kiosks, trailhead restrooms, interpretive signage, things like this. Campgrounds, basically anything that I've touched on with the UORG, you could restore with the RRI. I'll show some projects here in a second of things that we've helped with. But also if you have an asset that's still okay, but you need to retrofit it to be more adaptive friendly, that would be a great place to come here as well. Perhaps it's making a ramp up to an area to make it wheelchair accessible, things like this. Some examples, the San Rafael Equestrian Campground and Trailhead. This Backcountry Horseman group is a small but mighty organization that's done some awesome work restoring and repairing some corrals and trailhead signage and fencing for their user group. So awesome opportunity for them there. Somewhat locally here, the Jacobs Ladder reroute. I went up there this summer and took this picture. If you're familiar with this area, prior to this project from the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance, the reroute, Jacobs Ladder was a quite steep trail, pretty muddy, difficult if you're trying to hike up there with a 60-pound backpack of climbing equipment to access the Lone Peak Cirque. So Salt Lake Climbers Alliance came in, did a whole reroute. It's beautiful. It's an awesome grade. Super fun trail now. John Wesley Powell River Access Trail from the museum down there in Green River. We helped restore and repair an old walkway down to the river. The river had done some erosion on the old trail there, so we put in some stones, making it hopefully last a little bit longer, be more sustainable. And then up in Daggett County, the Little Hole Recreation Trail with Flaming Gorge releasing water every so often. The trails that were adjacent to the river were getting flooded and eroded, obviously. So they put in some platforms that they used actually on old oil rigs in the Pacific to restore and repair that area so that when water does come, it's not going to erode it each time. I mentioned accessibility. Was anyone able to attend the Outdoor Recreation Summit this year up in Ogden? Awesome. Hopefully you noticed a theme there. The night before we had the day on Weber State's campus, there were like 5 or 6 different groups from the adaptive community there showing off their machines, their equipment, their tools to get people out recreating. So when you're thinking about potentially building a new trail or restoring an old one, think about people of all types and abilities. Maybe it's making a berm just a little less severe in certain spots so that a recumbent bike might not tip over. Maybe it's moving some rocks in the middle of a pathway so that somebody on 2 wheels wide could get through it. Thinking about the proper heights for kiosks, signage, things like this. If you need help with some reference and some logistical numbers for all this, we'd be happy to connect you with the right resources. Just reach out to us. All right, so we've talked about all these fun ideas. Maybe you're thinking about projects that you have in the works that you could get going with. Let's talk about how you could actually make this happen logistically. So the UORG matching scale, like I mentioned last year, we introduced this UORG matching scale based on your county. We saw that it wasn't quite equitable for Rich County or Wayne County to be competing at the same level as, say, Salt Lake County or Utah County. There's not the same amount of money within those city organizations or counties. So basically, find your county that you reside in, and this is your address. So if you're a nonprofit, wherever your legal address is stationed, that's where your county match will come from. So obviously, starting on the left, we can see more of our urban counties requiring that 50-50 match, and then as we move further down to the right, we change the scale. The number on the left is where the applicant must come in with the match. The number on the right is what the state will provide in matching funding. Like I mentioned, this is just for Tier 1 and the RRI, so those 2 categories will have the county-based. All other grants will be 50-50, with the exception of the regional asset with urban and rural counties. At least half of the applicant's match must be cash. So when you're thinking about this, basically if you're 50-50 match, 25% of the project should be cash from you. 25% could come from an in-kind donation. And in-kind donations are basically the donation of goods, services, or time. So if somebody in goodwill donates an X amount of asphalt to your project and there's no exchange of cash, whatever that money might have been, they would say it's an in-kind donation. This is an opportunity for people that might not have a ton of cash to contribute to the project to come in with in-kind. 100% of your match could be cash if you have that sort of money, but this is a way to help with people that might not have it. Regional assets, like I mentioned, we want to see the 1-to-1 match for our rural and then 3-to-1 for urban. And then the applicants themselves, we are required to have some sort of skin in the game. So this means that if there are partner organizations that might be donating cash to your project, that's totally great. We love to see it. Maybe it's a grant from our division, from another opportunity outside of our division. But part of your match must be cash.
Give it about 5 seconds.
Okay.
I think this is generator related. This happened to us earlier this week.
Are we good to proceed? Yeah? All right, well, I was just on fire there, so that's why that happened, I guess. We're just talking about all things money. All right, well, that's exciting. Okay, I think I was at skin in the game, so basically putting money towards the project yourself. We've had applicants do as little as like $500 for this, so we just want to see that you are invested in the project with cash coming in from the applicant. So the budget, I think, is a tricky part of the whole process, and on page 17 and 18 of the program guide, this is the Utah Outdoor Recreation Program Guide, Patrick and I have done some work to try and help you understand the budget a little bit more. So this is the required budget sheet that you'll be using for this application. It goes step by step of what you need to put in here, and we've put some formulas in there that should light up red if you've done it wrong. So it's friendly, but if you have questions at any point during this process, please feel free to reach out. So talking about what is a match, this is a question we get a lot. Basically, the easiest way to think about it is if it's eligible for the grant itself, it's eligible as a match, right? So we can't help you with things that are not eligible for the grant. You can't use those as a match. But things that you could use as a match, prorated work for machines, if you're going to be using equipment, purchasing or renting equipment to do the work on a trail or a facility, you could definitely use that. Services provided. So if you're contracting out with a third-party contractor, obviously all of their time spent on the project would go towards either the match or the grant itself, whatever works best for you guys. Construction costs. So if you're actually putting in new fencing or stonework, things like this, you could definitely use the purchase of that as a match as well. Gifts and donations. So if you have another grant that you're applying for, whether from our division or somewhere else, you can use that money towards the project as a match as well. Engineering plans. We have a lot of questions come up about pre-work, before work begins from our contracts. We understand that you're doing a lot of design work and permitting work before we actually give you a contract. We just cannot help you anything before the contract takes place. One caveat here is the 15% engineering costs. So perhaps you have a contract in place, you've done all the preliminary design, permitting, and planning work, but maybe there's some engineering work that takes place during the contract. 15% of all of that could go towards your match as well. Disallowed costs or matches. So we're not going to help with any sort of storage of your equipment. There is a limit to the match of the applicant's employee time. All of that's discussed in the program guide in detail as well. Administrative costs, so we won't help you write the grant or do prep work for the grant, but obviously any time that you'd spend on the project itself during the contract period could go towards the match or the grant itself. Ongoing maintenance, obviously I think this happens after the contract has been closed out. If you need maintenance after the fact, the contract windows are 28 months, so all the work done within those 28 months we can help you with. Anything before or after, we cannot. Purchase or donations of real estate. We're not going to be able to help with any sort of easement acquisition or permitting for spaces here. There are other programs that we do fund out of our division that can help you with that. If you're purchasing a land or someone donated a land to you, we can use that in matches for other programs. This one just cannot. And then obviously anything completed before the work. So again, these contracts will usually likely go out middle of May. So don't do anything before then. Get all of your ducks in a row. But as soon as that contract goes into place, you can start charging us for your work in time. We have a question right here. Just wait till the mics get to you. Thanks.
What value do you put on volunteer hours?
Great question, thank you. $31.46 is the state rate of volunteers, and that can be used for all ages. So if you have high school mountain bikers that are minors, you can charge their time $31.46 towards your project. It's an awesome way. We encourage volunteer work as in-kind donation towards your projects. It's a great way to leverage a lot of dollars towards the in-kind portion of your match. All right. Do we have UDOT representatives here? I didn't think so. Was anyone able to attend the UDOT workshops that took place this fall? Just a few of you? Awesome. So hopefully you learned some things from that, but we just wanted to give a touch point here to this program because last year we had a few informational tidbits about the Utah Trails Network. This year we have just slightly more. But if you weren't familiar with it, Governor Cox and the head of UDOT last year got together and announced the Utah Trails Network. They're going to be putting a bunch of paved pathways throughout the state for transportation purposes, active transportation. And obviously active transportation and recreation go hand in hand. If it's a paved pathway that's getting you from work to home, it's also a recreational opportunity as well. So basically the guidance that we've received from Stephanie Tomlin, the head of the Utah Trails Network, is that if you are developing paved recreational pathways in your community, either through our funding or through UDOT's funding, continue to do the work, plug along. Maybe it's mile by mile. I know that's what a lot of communities are doing because it's so expensive to do these paved pathways. The Utah Trails Network might come in the next year or two and look and see. And that's what these workshops were. They were kind of evaluating what assets do we already have? Do we already have sections of trail that would be easy to continue? Some low-hanging fruit projects. So basically, if you have something already going, there's a good chance in the future years UDOT might come in and help you with it. And they have $90 million right now to put towards this project, $45 million this year, and then $45 million ongoing. So they have a ton of work, a ton of money to get out the door. They just need to kind of get their ducks in a row about how they're going to do it. And then hopefully in the future, if UTN does come in and develop a trail network in your community, we could come in and say we've got bike repair stations, shade covers, picnic tables along that corridor. So we hope to be good partners of theirs in the future. They also have the TIF fund, so if you are needing matching funding for a paved recreation from us, they're a great place to go to get matching dollars. And then just to give you an idea, I believe the Develop Potential Trail List is kind of where they're at in this developmental process. Those workshops kind of gave them a better idea of where to begin with this. So we still have a long way to go with this, but they're starting it. That's just a plug for UDOT. Finally, with UORG is the Utah Outdoor Classroom Grant. So this is an amazing opportunity to get kids learning outside. It can be as simple as putting in a pavilion. The Ogden Nature Center put in this awesome new accessible tree house that I went and toured up a couple months ago. This is awarded up to $15,000, so a limit of $500 to $15,000. We typically see a bunch of schools apply for this program, but we have seen cities and nonprofits as well, but an awesome place to go if you need help getting kids just learning outside. The match requirement for this is 50%. So again, if you are, regardless of where you are in the state, 50% match required for this. The Utah Outdoor Classroom Design Guide is available on our website. We had a student from Utah State develop this a couple years ago, and it's a great tool if you need some help kind of conceptualizing an idea, maybe not sure where to put something outside. This is a great place to go. And I'll just plug our website here. Rachel mentioned we have a ton of resources via QR codes at the back, but all of this information will be accessible on our website at recreation.utah.gov. Okay, what about park infrastructure? We'll touch on this quickly. Like I mentioned, we can't help with swing sets, monkey bars, things like this, but there are areas that we can help, and these are examples of things that we have done with park infrastructure in the past. Winchester Park over in Murray, they put in this boulder playground, so it's a great place to maybe gain some skills bouldering before you head up into the canyons. An awesome opportunity to get those skills developed there. Solstice and Interpretive Trail down in Teasdale. This is a fun community that is working together to create this, city park where they have a walkway around it and then a sundial basically in the middle to kind of represent how ancestors might have told time. And then the Thunderbird Disc Golf Course, again, down in Iron County. This is through one of their parks, so an idea would be to put in a disc golf course, maybe 9 or 18 holes throughout your city park, if allowable and feasible. So, again, that's just an idea. We've put in like archery ranges in parks as well, obviously in safe spaces, and also some low-hanging ropes course as well. All right, everyone's favorite time, the logistics, the dates, what to be aware of. So we're nearing the end of November, so you have about a month and a half before the grant opens. The application will be very similar to ones of last year. So if you have, if you've applied in the past, you can expect something pretty similar. But we'll have those available open on Tuesday, January 16th. And you have 2 months until March 15th to get your applications in. Early deadline is Friday, March 1st. So that's my time that I'll be able to help you and give some feedback, say maybe this is something I would change. Maybe your budget doesn't look quite right. I can help give feedback about that. And then contracts are ready usually in end of April or early May is, I would say, the best timeline to wait. And so again, I know that you will be anxious about, hey, we want to get this project going. Please just wait until the contract is ready to go and both parties have signed it before you begin any work. All right, any questions about UORG before I pivot real quick to UCORE? Okay, perfect. So the Utah Children's Outdoor Recreation and Education Grant is open for the next 5 days now. We're open right now, and we're super excited about this program opportunity. We ran it in 2020, saw massive success, and then after a few years of it going dormant, we re-released it this year in 2023. We've seen massive success already from it, so we're excited about it. So what is it? All the other grants that I've mentioned thus far have been infrastructure grants, so you're actually building something on the ground, you're putting in things on the ground. The UCORE is for programming costs related to recreation that are not infrastructure. So this is where you could come for, those equipment needs, the insurance costs, program costs, staff costs, things like this that are needed to get kids into the outdoors. The 3 pillars that we are going to be judging applications on are innovation, sustainability, and capacity building. So are you changing the way that kids get outside? Are you being innovative and creative in the ways that you do this? Are you creating sustainable programs, maybe by purchasing a few snowshoes, maybe those last few years, so you're creating a sustainable program? We understand that people come back to us year after year for applications and needs, which is totally fine, but we'd love to see that you're doing something that will last. And then capacity building. Maybe it's just expanding your staff from 1 to 3 or 1 to 2 and creating a space for more children to get outside because you have the capacity to do so. And also diversifying the groups of kids that you get outside, whether through scholarships or transportation, busing people from lower income areas to the mountains or whatever it may be. Basically anything that I've talked about with UORG, those type of activities, mountain biking, trail running, nature viewing, water sports, winter sports, could all be eligible for the Utah Outdoor Recreation. I can't even speak anymore. UCORE, we'll call it, as well as any sort of nature discovery tasks and items. So if you're familiar with the Every Kid Outdoors initiative, there's 10 awesome activities that kids can get involved with outside. And if they complete those activities, they send in their passport with the marks off of it, and then we can send them a prize. So things like that would be bird watching, nature study, outdoor stewardship activities, maybe you're doing a cleanup, planting seeds, wildlife viewing, or wildlife photography. So really cool to think about. Maybe you have an outdoor classroom. We've seen people do this. You have an outdoor classroom through us. This year coming back to do programming costs within your outdoor classroom. Okay, what are eligible and ineligible costs? Like I mentioned, full-time and seasonal staffing payroll is definitely eligible here. Transportation, we cannot pay for a whole new bus for you. This is only a $15,000 limit, so you couldn't probably get a bus anyway. But we can help with the rental or charter for those buses or vans to take kids to and from field trips. Maybe you have 5 field trips planned as a school to take kids somewhere outdoors. This could be a way to get those transportation costs covered. We will help pay for trailers and bike racks if you need those type of things as well. We will not help promote your program, so we can't do any sort of paid ads through social media or any marketing campaigns. But we can help with fabrication of educational materials, so maps, brochures, things like this that you'll actually be giving to your participants. Food and lodging and insurance for student participants. Really big and important thing to have insurance for all of your participants, whether your staff or the people in your program. And then again, like I mentioned, entry fees for field trips and education-based events, scholarships, maybe there's a $500 fee to attend a mountain biking course that you're offering. You want to cut that in half for certain groups. This would be a great place to go to get that funding. We can help with swag or incentive items for volunteers or participants, and then obviously program-specific equipment, harnesses, mountain bikes, helmets, things like that. Ineligible. We have so much money, like I mentioned, $16 million for infrastructure. Do not come to the UCORE grant for infrastructure because you will not get awarded there. Just to give you an idea, we have $250,000 to give out this year and over 130 applications potentially coming through. So it will be a very competitive process this year, but we love to see it because I think it means that we might elevate the amount of money next year for this. Out-of-state travel, so we're not going to be taking people to Nevada or California with this. Keep them in the state boundaries. Printing or marketing materials, like I mentioned. We won't cover meal reimbursements or lodging costs for your staff. And then facility rentals. So if you have an indoor or outdoor space that you're renting or getting permits for, we could not help with that. We won't be paying utility bills with this. And then staff trainings. We won't help with the training of your staff to participate in your program, but we will make exceptions for things like first aid or CPR. We want to make sure people are safe out there. So if you do need training costs covered for that, you can definitely use it. Any questions on ineligible or eligible items for UCOR? Does anyone have a grant in right now? Nice. Love to see it. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is open right now. We opened at end of October. We'll close December 4th. So again, you have a few days. If you have some spark of inspiration today, get your application in. And then these will be awarded in January of next year. These will be scored by a volunteer committee of youth representatives. Not youth. The youth will not be scoring these, but adults that partake and participate in youth recreation outdoors. And these are 18-month contracts, so we'll be putting them in January, and then they'll be expiring in July of 2025. So we'll have a year and a half to spend those dollars. Yes, Josie in the background.
Like, are you guys for sure opening this one up again next year, so like next fall, or is it still kind of in the works?
I mean, I think I can say with some shrugging of shoulders, yes. Yeah. Yeah, this is, again, the first year that we've run it in a while, so we'll have to see how it goes, but I think based on success, we'll hopefully run it again. Yes. And do you mind just waiting for the microphone before I can get it?
Not really a question necessarily, but we're in the process of applying for this, and I don't even know if this is on.
It is, you're good.
Okay. We're in the process of applying for this. Every time I get on the website, we'll start filling it out, and we go to hit save, and the website crashes, or it says there's an error and whatever. So we didn't know who to reach out to on that, but while you're
Okay,
bringing it up, just
let's talk after. I know that we had.
Probably a user error. I'm probably not doing something right, but
No, it's never. We had a few issues with that actually a couple weeks ago. Is it a recent thing that you've
it was
tried?
yesterday that we were.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, let's talk after, make sure we can get you squared away.
Are state agencies allowed to apply for UCOR?
Yes. Yep, UCOR is funded by the same sort of, the same funding source as UORG, so the same entities, federal and state agencies, will be eligible for UCOR as well. Yeah.
Is there an age limit on the students?
Yes, thank you. 6 to 18.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Great questions. Thanks and I will say this is a 20% suggested match. We understand lots of groups taking kids into the outdoors do not have a ton of cash flow available. So it'd be recommended that you put some sort of match into this game. If it's in kind only, explain why it's only in kind. There's a question on the application about can you contribute matching funding, and if not, why? But 20% is kind of that suggested mark. Okay, awesome. I'll stick around if you have questions after, but we'll pass it over to talk about motorized.
All right, thank you, Caroline. I appreciate it. So my name is Rachel Toker. As I stated earlier, I originally came from State Parks when it was known as State Parks and Recreation. And I've been overseeing this grant for quite a few years. I was kind of there when it first began. Throughout the process, we've changed a lot of things. Each year, we're consistently changing things based on the needs of our applicants and what works best for us and our employees. So this grant is called the Off-Highway Vehicle Recreation Grant, also known as OVER. It was formerly called the Fiscal Incentive Grant, with the acronym FIG. We had a swear box in our office for a long time saying that we're over FIG. There's about $10 in there, so no pizza party for us for anyone saying the word FIG in the office. But I'm going to delve into things. Before I get into it, though, if anyone has any questions or wants to follow along, you can find this information in this program guide. All right, so right off the bat, this grant has 6 different categories. So we have trail work, access protection, education, search and rescue, snowmobile, and OHV tourism. Each funding category has a different threshold. As you can see at the top, for trail work and access protection, we do allow additional funding. So with that, let's say it's even $1 over $350,000. We would like our applicant to apply for the additional funding, but then understand that they will need to come into our either in person or virtually in our review process to answer some questions and present on their project. Just because usually when it gets to that $350,000 range, we usually have some more questions that go into things. And then our last grant within a grant, it's not really a category, is our OHV land acquisition. This is actually open year-round, so today if you went to our website, it's there, available for people. Our funding threshold is $10,000 to $1 million per application. So let's say you see a parcel of land, or there's a right-of-way or easement, or even just leasing land, and you're running into the issue of paying for it. You can come and apply at any point throughout the year in coming years to receive funding. We review this a little bit different, but generally it has the same process as all of our other grants within this grant funding source. So yes, we have six categories and then an additional year-round grant. Our matching components. Most funding categories do not have a set match requirement. What that means is that we do require a match, but there's nothing stating that it has to be a specific percentage or amount. For large projects and projects that are not solely motorized, we strongly encourage a cash match from the applicant. Similar to what Caroline had to say, it could be $500. We just view a cash match from the applicant as skin in the game. So it shows your investment and involvement with the project. So all of our grants require matching funds, but we do have a couple specific categories that have set matching restrictions. So right off the bat, search and rescue. It's probably our heaviest sought after category, but what we run into with search and rescue is that it's usually not solely motorized. So it's usually a mixture of motorized and non-motorized. So hikers, bikers, those kind of things. We want that past information and that past data and statistics so that we can accurately calculate how much of your equipment or your purchase is going to go and assist motorized search and rescue. So if you apply for search and rescue, keep that in mind. We want that those percentages or an idea of past statistics. And we also want you to be aware that the applicant needs to make up the non-motorized portion of funding. This grant, the funding comes from OHV registration dollars, and we cannot pay anything that is non-motorized. Next is our OHV tourism category. As you saw on our last page, it is a smaller funding threshold. It's only $1,000 to $15,000 per request. So we do require 25% cash match. This is just because a lot of times we have run into some past issues and we're trying to alleviate those issues. But we do want to work with our applicants and keep that open for people to apply for. And then lastly, for our year-round OHV land acquisition, we want to see a 10% cash match and 5% in kind, so a total of 15%. Again, the cash match can come from the applicant, it can come from partners, etc. But again, we do want to see that if you do apply for this. As I'm going, is there any questions so far? Okay. All right, so I'm going to get into some examples. What I love about this grant and why I love to oversee this grant is because there's a lot that it can do. It has very few funding limitations. Most of the funding limitations relate to non-motorized and then the potential of vehicles, because we can't pay for vehicles because that's not where the funding comes from. But there's a lot of capability, especially given those 6 categories and that additional grant opportunity. So I'll start out with trail work. And again, if you have this program guide in front of you, the page numbers below correlate with what's here up on these slides. So for trail work, we have the Flint Trail to Big Ridge 2-pipe loop Happy Canyon trails. I've said this 10 times, and each time I hate it. It's so long. But I really wanted to highlight this one because it is with the Wayne County Road Department, and I wanted to highlight this because what they've done in the past is they've come to us in our different grant cycles to request funding for equipment. So they've come to us, I believe, 3 separate times for different large pieces of equipment. So now they've acquired that equipment, and they've come to us and they're actually going to start utilizing it and working on trails. But I also really wanted to highlight this because they're working and collaborating with Garfield County, because a lot of these trails, it takes a long time to get out there. It takes a while to get out there, and they need that collaboration and to work with that other county to get this work done. We love to see that. We love to say how much we love our partners and when our applicants have partners. Next is Ride with Respect. This is our access protection category. I'm sure some of you have heard what's going on in Moab with the potential loss of motorized trails, some really fun off-roading trails out there. So this is with a nonprofit. He's participating in BLM travel management plans, and what he's doing is he's writing those letters, he's working with attorneys, he is going out there and showing up and putting a face to the nameless thousands that could potentially lose access to those trails. The next one is education. This is the Pails for Nails OHV Pocket Trail Guide and Don't Burn campaign. I actually took this picture, so it's a bad picture, I apologize. This is with Geauga County Tourism Department. Each year, they have a number of events at their sand dunes out there. A couple years ago, they had an event, I believe it was the UTV takeover, and Red Bull was there. And when Red Bull left, they wrote a bad article about the conditions out there and how many nails were popping tires because people were burning pallets. Well, no county wants to have that publicity made public. So to kind of get around that and to really alleviate that, they had the Pails for Nails and Don't Burn campaign. So I went there this year for their UTV takeover, and this was a really fun event. So what they did is they brought out kids, and they had, little pails, little buckets that you build sandcastles with. And the kids went around and collected trash and nails. And whoever had the most weight-wise amount of trash and nails received a $500 gift card. Sorry, not gift card. They received $500 cash. Second place received $250, and third place received $100. Everyone else probably got tetanus, but it was a really fun event. And it was really exciting to see how involved the kids were, as well as the parents going out there. So again, something bad happened, and they used it to their advantage, and now they're getting kids and adults going out there, picking up trash, and showing them how to properly recreate in that area. Next one is our search and rescue category. This is with our Utah County Sheriff Search and Rescue. They purchased a Polaris Expedition UTV. This is just a number of what we have available for search and rescue. A lot of times we do pay for equipment and transportation of that equipment, but we also pay for training. This is probably our heaviest sought after category. But again, if you do apply for this, we want to make sure that we're just paying for the motorized section for this grant. All right, on to snowmobile. So this is a newer category. For a while, we didn't have funding available for snowmobile, but we've changed that recently. So this is for Utah Avalanche Center. It's the motorized avalanche forecasting. What they're doing is they're actually building towers, additional towers, so that they can access data and get that data to their users to help with avalanche awareness. So this is actually kind of, or where they're going to be building the towers is up in Wyoming in the Utah border. So an area that they haven't been able to get data to or had people physically have to go up there, but now they can report on that data and then send it to all of their users. The next one for OHV Tourism, this is with Paiute Trail Committee. So this is a nonprofit, and they oversee the Paiute Trail. They're very passionate, but pretty much we've worked with them for a number of years to access and create open terrain on the Parker Mountain, and now it's finally open and accessible for OHV users. So what we're doing is we're helping them promote that additional mileage of trail that they now have access to. And then lastly, this is our year-round OHV land acquisition grant example that we have. So this is Beaver Main Street Trailhead with the Tusher Mountain ATV Club. Again, this is a nonprofit going out of their way to make sure that they allow more access for OHV users. So this area right here was really just a vacant parking lot. It had been on the market for years. No one was touching it. No one wanted it. They didn't want to build a house, but it was right off of Main Street. So what this nonprofit did is they spoke to the owner of it, and they were able to negotiate a lower price. And so what they did is they came in there and they purchased the land with our assistance, and they've actually turned it into a staging area now. So it's a staging area right off of Main Street that ties into the Tusher Mountains as well as the Paiute Trail. And they actually use it as a staging area for a number of their jamborees that they put on yearly. So again, showing its recognition and what it can do. This is just one of many examples that we could utilize using the year-round OHV land acquisition grant. All right, so I'm going to talk about the submission to award process. So we have 2 grant cycles for this grant. So it's open in the summer and it's open in the spring. We open it for approximately 2 months and they close at 5 p.m. The dates are subject to change based on holiday and weekends. And then so once it's submitted, I go in and I do an internal review, and then I send it out to our OHV Advisory Council, which consists of a 12 volunteer committee that oversees this. They're all volunteers of the state with different passions and off-highway vehicles. And so they make recommendations. They make those recommendations and then we pass them along to our department director and our division director to sign off on. So generally we like to think that this is pretty quick turnaround for us. And then the awards notifications go out in 1 to 2 business days after their final approval. So again, we try to make this a quick process so people can be on the ground in utilizing funding and equipment, etc., to assist with their needs. All right, so just an overview. So to date, we've funded 307 projects with over $14 million awarded. Each year, we receive $3.5 million available. Sorry, we receive $3.5 million to put towards grants. We're hoping to increase that because we're seeing the demand, we're finally meeting the demand, and people are becoming aware of the grant that we have to offer. So as I stated earlier, we have 2 different grant cycles. In 2024, we have a spring cycle and a summer. Our spring cycle opens February 1st and closes April 2nd, and our summer cycle opens June 3rd and closes July 31st. But in addition to those closing dates, we also have an early review deadline. So very similar to what Caroline has to offer, we offer the same thing. So in spring and summer, it's March 15th and July 15th. What I'll do is you send me your application or you shoot me an email, and I will go through and I will review your application. I'll make recommendations. I do like to state that I will not write your application for you, but I will assist in any way you need. A lot of times my focus is usually making sure that your budget properly explains what the project entails. I like to tell people that I should be able to look at your budget and understand exactly what your project is going to do. So again, if you're interested in this, keep those deadlines in mind because usually everyone that I work with, it receives the funding for their project. Lastly, I want to really throw a shout out to our trail crew. Jaden Whitaker is actually in the crowd. Hey, Jaden. So in the past, our division had to offer an OHV statewide trail crew. Well, obviously, not all of our users are motorized. So what we're doing is now we have a statewide trail crew. So it's motorized and non-motorized. So let's say you have needs that aren't being met or you can't find volunteers or you need extra assistance. Well, Jaden will be overseeing or assisting as our liaison to assist getting those different crews out to people. We've expanded. We're still in the hiring process of a lot of those positions, but now they'll be in 4 different regions of the state. So they're spread out because a lot of the time we ran into issues with people trying to work outside of the Salt Lake office and go all the way down to Wayne County. It wasn't working, so now we're spread out. So again, if you need assistance, please get a hold of Jaden Whitaker. He'll be kind of the one setting up where those teams will be going. Okay. So that is all I have for the grant that I oversee. Is there any questions before I do our closing out of state grants? Okay. All right. So some things to consider when applying for state grants. So here on the screen, you can see all of our state grants that we've gone through to date. But some things to just think about and be aware of when you're working on things. So projects on federal lands may require compliance with environmental regulations, NEPA, or obtaining environmental clearance. If you're working on federal land, you have to follow their regulations. So again, please keep that in mind. Let's say you apply for my grant. We will actually pay for NEPA the grant that I oversee, the OHV Recreation Grant, we pay for NEPA. And we also pay for the second bullet as well, which I will talk about. Historic site considerations. So we work closely with the State Historic Preservation Office. They do some wonderful work. They're amazing to get out with. They're always a blast, and they're so knowledgeable. But we work closely with them because when it comes to either building trails that are new or trails that have not been disturbed in over 50 years, they consider that historic. So statewide and federally, anything that's over 50 years is considered historic. So let's say you're building a new trail. Or an undisturbed trail that hasn't been disturbed in 50 plus years. You want to contact them. If you reach out to them, they'll come out. They do charge a small fee, but they will come out. They'll survey the land, they'll point out any artifacts or issues that you may have. They'll document it. They might have you potentially reroute a trail a little bit, or they might tell you not to dig in an area. It's better to reach out to them before you do anything. If you know you're building a new trail or it hasn't been disturbed. Because if they come out after the fact, there's a chance that they'll fine you. Recently, I was out with them in Eureka, and they were telling us about a university that they had who they'd come out and they told them not to dig in an area. Well, they dug in that area anyways, which unfortunately disturbed some remains. And because of that, they were fined. They got fined $500,000 for disturbing remains that were historic. So again, please keep it in mind. They just come out there. They really do want to help. They're not trying to hinder it. It might take a day. It's better to do it before than run into any issues afterwards. All right, so next, on to our letters. So generally, we call these letters of support. Federally, they don't like to say that they support things, so they'll likely be called letters of communication. Something, we'll figure it out. But anyways, we want to see those letters come from the head of the organization. We've run into issues when it comes to federal partners signing off on these letters and not having it be from the head of the organization because there's someone in the field office or a ranger in the field that says, yeah, I like this project. I think it'll be great. And then it turns out that they didn't have the proper approval. So again, when it comes to those letters, just keep in mind who's signing off on them. For all of our federal partners, we will have a directory. So if you're interested or you don't know who to contact or who to have them sign off on those letters, we'll have that directory available for when our major grants open up. And then, let's say you apply for a grant and you receive funding. All of our grants, all of our state grants receive an automatic 28-month timeline to complete the project. So right off the bat, 28 months to complete the project. Of course, UCOR only has 18 months, but every other every other grant opportunity that we've spoken about today has that 28-month time frame. And then 2 other items. Applicants must have insurance coverage to protect both staff and volunteers involved in the project. So if someone's on the ground doing work, there needs to be insurance that covers them. So again, keep it in mind. And then lastly, awarded applicants must complete a progress report every 6 months. So if you receive funding, we'll send you those notifications and just have you fill out a really brief page going over those progress reports, what you've done, what you need to do, any issues you've run into. So this is it for our state grants. Anything else? Is there any questions before I pass this on to Evan? Okay, all right. Evan, you're up.
All right. Rachel, thank you very much. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody is wide awake after that fire alarm. If we see anybody nodding off, we might have to crank it back up. So let's keep engaged here. No, thank you guys so much for taking the time to come out here today. My name is Evan Beich. I administer the federal grant programs for the division here, so I'm going to be talking about those. This is my first grant tour. I just wanted to kind of highlight how great it is that I think we do this, that we go through this effort. So just to kind of re-emphasize what we've been going through these past few weeks. We as a division have pretty much crammed into a vehicle together and driven all across the state. This is workshop number 12. So we went to Vernal, down to Monticello, over to Cedar City, up to Logan. We've been out and about, and I just think it's a good example of what we're trying to accomplish as a division, which is really just spreading the wonderful benefits of recreation to all who want to get outside. So without with that being said, as mentioned, I'm going to be talking about our federal grant programs. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk about the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And so something about our federal grants, these operate a little bit differently than our state-funded programs, and I'm going to touch on some of those sort of key differences. But I'll also talk about some of the cool programs and activities that we can fund exclusively through these federal programs. So I'll touch on all of that, and let's go ahead and jump in. So again, this is the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This program is offered through the National Park Service. So the LWCF provides funding for the acquisition and development of lands or water access for use primarily in recreation, but also in conservation and education as well. So the three sort of primary project types that we see are acquisition, development, or a combination of the two of those. So acquiring a parcel of land and potentially developing recreation infrastructure on that parcel. And so to kind of get those wheels spinning, I'll go through a list of some of the traditional types of projects that we see. By no means is this a comprehensive list of the types of projects that you can do with this funding. So I'll touch on some of these, but hopefully these get the wheels spinning. This is only our second year administering this program within our division. So we're still kind of seeing what we can do with this grant. And we're really excited to see what new ideas people are coming up with. But yeah, just to kind of briefly read from my slide here and run through these. You can utilize the LWCF to acquire a new park or natural space, picnic areas, pavilions. Caroline was touching on how UORG, again, not quite as cool as she kind of mentioned herself, cannot fund playgrounds or ball fields. We can do that through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. I'm just kidding. UORG is awesome. But yeah, we can fund playgrounds, ball fields, court facilities, golf courses. Water-oriented activities is kind of a unique one that we can do through this program as well. So any sort of swimming pools, a lot of people will come to LWCF for that, or for splash pads. Historic and cultural interpretation, that's another cool use that we've seen. I actually just got back from a trip down south with Chris Merritt from the State Historic Preservation Office. We were looking at an old historic mining museum and looking at potentially utilizing recreation as a tool to protect those resources and educate recreation users on our past. So there's some cool uses of this fund that we're kind of scraping the surface of now. But yeah, campgrounds, fire pits are a great use, fishing and hunting areas, winter sports facilities, amphitheaters, bandstands, roads, restrooms, and park maintenance buildings, as long as kind of mentioned, if there's that recreation tie-in, we can help with that. And then finally, nature centers and community gardens. So that's, again, my quick list. Yes, please.
Would dredging be available?
Dredging.
Yeah, to allow recreation on the water.
Interesting ask. Okay, see, those are the wheels spinning that we're talking about here. We'll chat after this. I haven't heard about that, but who knows? Maybe. So let me get into the nitty-gritty here. So our grant cycle is opening up very, very soon. So actually this Friday, we have adjusted our dates for those of you that have applied in the past. We're opening up December 1st, closing on March 1st. So again, very, very soon. Hope to see some applications coming in from this room potentially. But yeah, as mentioned, that's a little bit different than we've been doing it in the past. We're trying to work to align ourselves with the federal calendar here. Last year was, again, our first time as a division administering this program. We had a record number of online applications. We're set to award over $8 million in total project costs from that. And kind of alluding to that as well, this is a two-phase application cycle. And so what that essentially means is that, again, we as a state administer the program, and we will kind of comb through our online applications, and we'll rank those here locally, from the state side. And the projects that we select, we will announce the award of those to the project sponsor, and then we will pass those along to the National Park Service for the final approval. So only that first phase is competitive. The federal phase is more of just kind of getting that final green light to proceed with the projects. And so now I'm going to touch on, after this slide, a little bit of why some of those federal considerations can take a hair longer, and we'll talk about that. Before I move along, just kind of similar to our state programs, this is a matching grant, so 50-50 cost share, meaning that the project sponsor pays for half of the cost, and we will reimburse you either intermittently throughout the project or after the project is complete. Our minimum project ask is $50,000. Our max award is $2.5 million. And of course, you can use in-kind services or volunteers as part of your match. So that's a good use of the funding. Okay, any questions before I move on from that? I see one back there, yes.
So I'm seeing that you selected 11 projects. Do you know kind of what like when you're saying it's competitive, how many projects actually apply to this grant?
Yeah, good question. I think last year we got about, oh boy, I want to say in the 20s, 21, 22 applications. That actually might be less. But so we're hoping to see even more than that this year. So as the program grows, and again, as new ideas start coming in, who knows what our applications will look like. Yes, question behind you.
Can other federal funds be used as match for this grant? Say a project that has different phases to it that may be happening concurrently?
Right, I'm glad you asked
Another
that.
phase that has different aspects to it also be used as a match?
Yeah, so it can get a little bit tricky with federal funding, and I'm glad you asked that because I did need to touch on that. So eligible applicants for this program are typically local governments, cities, towns, counties. So local governments, tribal governments, state agencies are eligible. Nonprofits are eligible. Federal partners do not go through me. We have an online, it's sort of like a separate application that federal partners can go through. But as far as matching funds, we have another federal grant program, the Recreational Trails Program. That is an eligible match. Community Block Development Grants is an eligible federal match. And those are the two standard matches that I've seen. As you're sort of alluding to, it can get somewhat complex when matching federal funds with federal funds. But if you have a specific use you'd like to ask about, I'll put my contact up here. You can certainly reach out to me. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, so is this the program where we're for buying land for parks, that if you already had land for park and it got used for something else, does that make you so you can't do this? I know there's a program out there where you got to take care of all that old stuff.
Yeah, I'll get into that on this next slide here. There are some federal considerations that I certainly want all of our applicants to be aware of. There are some long-term planning needs that come with the LWCF that are worth being aware of. Did I see one more question over here? Yes.
Yeah, how much money is in the budget to be allocated?
So we get a $4 million apportionment from the National Park Service each year. So we have that $4 million apportionment coming in, and then we have about $2 million left over from the previous year. So somewhere close $5-6 million available. Anybody else? I will move on, and hopefully some of these questions will be addressed as I continue as well. So as mentioned, there are some sort of federal aspects that are worth being aware of. I'll kind of actually jump ahead since this question was just asked. So there is a perpetuity clause included within the National Park Service's contract, and that basically states that if you are applying for the federal funds, for National Park Service funds, they do want to see that your site remains a recreation asset in perpetuity. So the project sponsor, you own the property, you are in full possession of this property. The National Park Service is not snagging your land or anything like that. But basically, they just want to see that site remains in use for recreation. So you are signing off that you are going to remain a public recreation asset in perpetuity. And so if you say as a project sponsor, update that, say you put a fire station on your property instead, they would want to see that you would kind of replace that parcel with the land of equal value. And so that's kind of how that perpetuity thing works. And I'm glad you asked that because it is good kind of having that long-term vision before you apply and understanding what you're getting into. Another aspect that separates our federal grant programs from our state programs is NEPA compliance. So before any federal funds can be awarded, before any shovels can go in the ground, we do need to make sure we've established a NEPA pathway. So essentially establish that no natural resources, environmental, historic or cultural, biological resources are affected by the development of any recreation infrastructure. So that's not something that needs to be complete when you apply, but it is something that we want to see has been considered. We are trying to make this process a little bit more seamless and easy for our applicants, but for now, there are some online resources that are available. Before you apply, please try to take a look and just, establish that, your project site isn't in a floodplain, isn't directly next to a wetland. These are the kind of things that might trigger a NEPA issue. So it's good to kind of have that foresight before you apply. And then finally, the last federal consideration, I have federal timeline. Put on your patient pants. It can take a little bit of time to get the final approval. We are working with that federal calendar to try to make this a little bit more efficient. So basically, it'll take typically about 2 months on our state side to receive our applications, go through those, rank those, and award those. Select those. And then it can take upwards of 6 to 8 months-ish on the federal side getting the final approval. We're hoping to get that under 6 months this next round. So we're hoping that things can be a little bit quicker here. And we do have some success stories in the room that have been quicker than that. So that's the quick rundown. Any questions before I move on from the Land and Water Conservation Fund? Okay, this is still related, so I'm now going to talk about our statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, also known as SCORP, a little bit easier, less of a tongue tie. The SCORP is essentially a 5-year eligibility requirement for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So in order for us as a state to receive our $4 million apportionment I mentioned earlier, we must keep up with a SCORP each year. So we must develop a SCORP every 5 years. And so we are currently on year 5. So we are right in the midst of developing our SCORP right now. And essentially, this is just a valuable opportunity for us to really reach out to everyone involved within the sphere of recreation and really assess, what the biggest needs are, what the priority needs are for recreation, how we can make it more accessible and more enjoyable to all who wish to get outside and experience it. One of the big ways we're doing this is primarily through data collection, and the biggest way we can do that is through online surveys. So we have 2 surveys that are currently live at this very moment. As a recreation user or as someone that perhaps facilitates the access to recreation, we would really, really love to hear from you. This information will be incredibly valuable to us as we kind of figure out how we can better utilize our federal funding in the future. But I also think this information will be incredibly valuable to you as recreation providers, as you'll have this insight as to how people are recreating, what they think the priorities and the needs are of their community. So as mentioned, there's 2 surveys. We have a recreation user survey. That one is live. I'm going to put a link up to that after this. And we have a recreation provider survey. And a recreation provider, by our definition, is anyone that really, again, facilitates that access to recreation. So if you are a city, a county, a town, a nonprofit, a federal entity, if you're helping people get outside, your opinion would be incredibly valuable to us, and we would appreciate so much you taking this survey. So I'm going to put that up in a second. But again, as mentioned, the data from this effort is going to be highly valuable to us, and it's also going to be essentially a cheat sheet to our users in the future as they apply and they can be able to assess, what our needs are as a state and how they can align with those as they apply. So we just to kind of give you an idea of where we're trending as a division, we've established 4 core pillars that are really guiding our SCORP development effort. And again, these will kind of be a good measuring stick as you apply in the future for like where we're trending and what we're trying to prioritize. So our 4 park priorities, I'll briefly run through these, are community health, land, air, and water, equal access, and community connection. So community health is really just the simple idea of wanting to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to get outside. We want to increase the health, whether that be physical health or mental health of our communities. Land, air, and water, that's a very simple one. We just want to make sure that we're recreating in a responsible manner, that our developments are being constructed sustainably. We'd love to see projects coming in that are using water-wise technology, that are being efficient with their water use, efficient with their landscaping. These are all great things that'll certainly help your scoring. Equal access, just as mentioned, the fact that we're kind of making and taking the time to go throughout the state and share this information about our grants. We also want to share the benefits of recreation. So every community we want to be involved in getting outdoors. Every age, every demographic, we want our disabled users to be able to get outside. We want our rural communities to be able to get outside and recreate close to home. So that's all kind of things that we're working on. And then finally, community connection. Another thing I alluded to earlier, establishing that tie between recreation and our history and our culture and sort of using that as a big melting pot, getting people outside and enjoying and learning at the same time. So that is SCORP. I am now going to put up I'm going to put up a QR code that'll give you access to these surveys. So whether as a recreation user or a recreation provider, you don't have to take it right now by any means, but if you do want to just scan this, it'll be on your phone for later, and you can plop on the couch. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Again, this data will be certainly valuable to us. If you don't scan this now, we have another handout in the back that you could access this code on as well. But this is going to take you to our website, where you can access the recreation user survey and the recreation provider survey, both right there. So we look forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you for your participation in that. That is the SCORP. That is the LWCF. Any questions on either of those before I proceed? Okay. I am now going to talk about our final federal grant program. This is the Recreational Trails Program, or RTP. So the RTP is a federally funded program offered through the Highway Administration. And so this basically provides funding for the development or maintenance of trail systems, any sort of supportive trail infrastructure or signage. All of that is eligible through this program. So essentially anything and everything related to trails is funded under the RTP. And it's essentially 2 grants within a grant. So there's a motorized section of the RTP and a non-motorized section. And these are actually scored separately. So we have 2 different communities, 2 different scoring committees that'll basically comb through these projects and work through these to figure out, what those priority projects should be. So I'll touch a little bit on what some of our standard projects look like and what our categories look like, and then I'll also touch on some unique applications of this grant as well. So some of the more standard uses. So the RTP can be utilized for development or maintenance of new trails, existing trails, and that goes for the same for facilities or for signage. You can certainly use the RTP for any of that and any equipment that is necessary for the development or maintenance of that. So you can purchase or lease maintenance equipment through the RTP. Grooming equipment is a popular use we see for winter trails. Construction equipment, so backhoes, excavators, any sort of necessary equipment to facilitate that access to trails can be funded under the program. Education's a cool use as well. So we can help fund publications, programming, the distribution of that information as well we can help out with. And then also to finally kind of wrap up, acquisitions. So trail access, trail connections can be funded through easements or fee simple title through the RTP. All right, so some examples. I think this is helpful as, often when we hear trails, what first comes to our mind is your standard hiking trail in the woods. There's also vertical trails. There's a wide range of trails. Hopefully I can kind of touch on some of these here. But yeah, one thing that I think is really awesome about the RTP is we really see a lot of our partnerships shine through this program. One of those great partnerships is with the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance. We just recently completed a trail that partnered up with the Forest Service to help really restore some really popular climbing routes in Maple Canyon down the street on U.S. Forest Service land. This project helped to clean up some of the trails that were accessing these popular climbing routes, as well as restore some of the bolt maintenance and anchors on the climbing route. So love seeing that. Another incredible partnership that we often utilize with the RTP as well is with the Utah Avalanche Center. We love working with them. We recently started a trail conditions reporting project with them. So what this is essentially a text message alert that's going to go out to anyone that kind of opts into this service throughout the state. This is going to be regionally based. So before anyone goes out and goes backcountry skiing or goes out into the backcountry in the winter, you can check your phone before you go out in the morning, make sure the conditions are safe. So, I mean, we just love seeing this. We love seeing that people are going to be, recreating more safely through this funding. Finally, Caroline touched a little bit on the Utah Trail Network. As she sort of was alluding to as well, like we certainly don't want to discriminate or tell anybody not to continue building paved trails. They're certainly important, and we want to see these funds still being utilized for that. And a good way that we kind of see these funds being utilized in the future is, as the Utah Trail Network continues to develop, we certainly anticipate that there will be some needs to perhaps plug communities into that larger system. RTP is certainly available for that. And then finally, I wanted to one more time emphasize our motorized aspect to this program. So the OHV program is primarily where we will direct anyone that has, motorized needs. But the RTP has, certainly a very generous sponsor matching requirement that I'll touch on in a second. But if you have motorized needs, the RTP is a wonderful resource for you. I touched on some of the awesome uses of the fund for equipment purchase and trail development that we can help out with. Last year, we had 4 applications, and this is not to, give anybody a hard time at all. We only had 4 applications last year for our motorized category for the RTP. All 4 of those got funded. So, maybe those wheels can spin there. If you want to come somewhere a little less competitive, this is a great option for you. RTP's sponsor and match requirements that I was just talking about. So I'd say this is one of our most generous share requirements. We have questions. Let's hear them.
Yeah. Is this grant flexible enough for river trails or if we have a stand-up paddleboard or kayak trail on a reservoir with bathrooms along it? Is it flexible enough for that?
That's a good question. I know with water rights, things get, a little tricky. As I mentioned earlier, the Land and Water Conservation Fund could be a potential use case for that. But happy to chat with you after this if, we can try to figure something out. Yeah, good question. Anybody else? Okay. what I was just quickly talking about, our matching requirements for RTP are incredibly generous. There's only 20% sponsor match requirement, all of which can be in-kind or volunteer services. So there's a lot of room for flexibility there for making your project stretch. While I'm thinking of it, I'd also like to emphasize all of these grants play pretty nicely together. The RTP can match the LWCF. So our federal programs play nicely together, and all of our state and federal programs play nicely together. And that's a really, really good way to get your project funded, is braiding these different funding sources. So something to consider there. Our max award was raised this year. Previously, we were $150,000 as our max ask. We are now at $200,000 for the RTP. As mentioned earlier, with any federal grant program, there are NEPA requirements. That is something that we are, again, trying to make a little bit more simple for you guys. But again, we want to see that it's been considered before you apply. Before contracts are in your hands, before we can send out those contracts, we need to see that all of your NEPA documentation has been collected and provided. Finally, the grant cycle opens up February 15th, so early next year, closes out May 5th. If you have any questions about the RTP, about the LWCF, give me a shout beforehand. Be happy to help you out as much as I can before you apply. But we are certainly all here for you. That's for any of our grants if you have any questions. Finally, that is it for me. Before I hop off, does anybody have any more questions about federal grant programs? I see one in the back.
Just a quick follow-up on the RTP program. Can that be used to create like digital education resources around trail that we might use for various outdoor recreation programs?
Yeah, I think that'd be like a really cool use. Are you saying something like perhaps like a QR code that somebody could read at a trailhead, or like?
We have an online, kind of a mobile site that people can use around the Jordan River Trail. We actually want to develop it into an app.
Nice, okay.
Also add in connectivity so that all of our static education and interpretive signs can also have a lot of additional content online in the app.
Very cool. That sounds like a good fit. Yeah.
Okay.
Great question. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to pass it along to the very capable hands of Carly here to finish us off. Thank you, Carly. All right, appreciate it, guys.
All right, well, I think the real round of applause goes to everyone on the grants and planning team that just circled the state. I think, was this the 12th or the 13th time you've given this presentation? Yeah, so they've, got it down to a science here. And so just want to thank all of them for their work and getting the word out about these opportunities. So my name is Carly Lanch. I'm a recreation planner with the division. I joined a year ago when the division was new and forming. And prior to coming to the division, I worked at a county, and I was the trail and active transportation planner. And so I was on where you all are writing these grants. So while I like to joke that I'm not only the last person to present, I'm also the least. I have no money to give you right now. But so the power of planning, that's really what makes an application great for going after all of these opportunities. And there's a lot of unseen work that goes into making sure that your community or your organization is poised and ready to go after and apply for these grants. So that's where ORPA comes in. It's Outdoor Recreation Planning Assistance. I know it's another acronym after all of the ones you've learned today. So it's another one to add to your repertoire. This is an opportunity for organizations, primarily municipalities, counties, or tribal governments. If you're a nonprofit, you can still apply if you have a partnership with a public entity, and so they can submit an application that you support. But we just want to make sure that you have already done some legwork in terms of getting some of those local partners on board and working in alignment with what that the local community wants. So ORPA is, we have an application that opens up this spring in February. And it's a pretty simple application, and we'll just ask for a letter of support to show that you've worked with the public entity if you're a nonprofit, or
any partners that might be involved. And the idea is to help you really vision and get the necessary stakeholders that need to be looped in and brought into the fold early on so that you can have a plan of action and go after some of these grants. Primarily, we're hoping to target smaller communities. So for example, last year we awarded the ORPA recipients to Bicknell, which is a tiny town in Wayne County, and then Uintah County over in the Vernal area. In Bicknell, we're in the process of working on a trail master plan for that area so that they can develop trails close to home. And so through that, we've done public surveying. We have an open house soon to get more public feedback, working with the BLM really closely so that we can work in alignment with what the land manager deems is feasible for that zone, and other stakeholders. And Bicknell has, I think the last census was 333 people. So for example of the types of towns that we're really targeting. Vernal's a little bit different, but this was a really unique opportunity for us to help be involved. In Vernal, they wanted to develop some vertical trails, so climbing routes. And, you know, if you're a climber, you know that a lot of climbers just put up routes and they kind of ask for forgiveness later there's not necessarily an approval through the land manager oftentimes. So this was a unique opportunity for us to really work with the county, the BLM in the area, and try to establish a protocol for anchor maintenance ahead of the game so that they can be efficient with what they're investing in, what kind of hardware goes into the wall, and make sure that liabilities are covered. Kind of through this planning effort, actually, we recognize that state statute needs to change to allow for Uintah County to not be held liable in the instance of some sort of accident. And so, representatives were enthusiastic, and there's actually a bill that's going through the legislature now in this general session to amend that. So we'll kind of unearth things through the planning process that maybe would have been a hurdle. We start asking those questions and trying to get ahead. So for an example, a little bit more, just the stakeholder facilitation, visioning, outreach, community input is a big thing that we can help with. We always want to help people feel confident in their funding strategies too. So we've thrown around the term grant braiding today, but really trying to weave opportunities together and establish partnerships to go after money and maintain the assets that we help fund. So just an idea, and there's the application date there on the slide. And then the other aspect of ORPA is we call them mini consultations. They're really just give me a call, let's have a meeting. I love to overuse the term, let's throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Really, that's what we're doing. Sometimes communities don't know where to start, what trees to bark up, what questions they need to be asking. So just here to be a sounding board too and help maybe connect you to other resources. I mean, our grants team, they're always accessible and happy to help. But if you don't even know which grant to apply for, go to me. I'm happy to steer you in the right direction. Happy to come out to your community too and walk around. So you can't really plan for trails through a computer. Sometimes you got to go walk the ground. Jake Young knows. He's in the audience today. He and I laid out some Bonneville Shoreline Trail just last spring together. So got to do that on the ground. Anyways, that's a summary of ORPA, and I do want to give credit to Betsy Burns. We have her in the audience today. She's with the National Park Service's Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program. Betsy, if you want to come up, you don't have to. If you don't want to, I don't want to put you on the spot too much. But we really mimicked the ORPA program after the good work that RTCA does. And they work everywhere outside of the national park boundary and doing similar assistance and even beyond the scope of recreation. So Betsy's an awesome resource. You can absolutely apply for ORPA or RTCA support. If you need information on that, feel free to reach out or grab Betsy after the meeting.
Well, we'd love to work together, so
Yeah.
we can partner together on projects.
Yeah. absolutely. Yeah, we could do both. So help combine efforts. Any questions? Your heads might be spinning with all of the information from today. So yeah. Oh, gotta get the mic.
So when you're talking about these mini consultations, that's a great resource, right? For like all of the counties that maybe won't get that that won't be awarded that recipient. So if you are the recipient, how much more work are you guys doing for the recipient versus the mini consultation?
Yeah, and so so when you are awarded, when you're an ORPA recipient, we give you more dedicated time. So for instance, I'm helping both Bicknell and Uintah County right now from the beginning to as close as we can to the end. So they're going to have an action plan and a master plan after the fact so that they can move forward and have that as their charter. And so for other communities, you know, I'm happy to, I have tons of example like easement language. I've got like staff position examples if your community wants to hire capacity for recreation. I have just a bunch of stuff, and Betsy does too, that we're happy to just share with you. So that's kind of the difference, is kind of more quick assistance. But yeah, it depends. We had one community too reach out, and they requested a really specific, they want to do a workshop with a bunch of different stakeholders to figure out kind of general direction. And so they weren't a recipient, but I still went out to that community and I hosted a workshop for them to kind of foster the discussion there, even though it wasn't a formal. So it totally depends on capacity too for many consultations. I want to be everywhere at once, but sometimes that's not possible. So just have to narrow things down a little bit. But am I missing anything? Yeah.
Can you, with your mini consultation, do assistance with applying for another grant program?
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you brought that up. So there's so many different grants that we have in our division, but there's also many that are outside of our division. And so, for instance, UDOT has technical planning assistance funding, and so I've been working with Fillmore City and helping them on their application so it's a little bit stronger, because they have a trail connection to it. So I'm happy to help review a grant application. When it comes to DOR applications, I can't write it for you, but I'm happy to help. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. We're looking at a grant right now with a national nonprofit organization.
Mm-hmm.
And just because of staffing limitations, could use a little assistance, particularly on the outdoor recreation part of this grant. And some assistance with just helping to define the project and things like that might be beneficial. Maybe I can follow up with you.
Let's talk. I'd love to, even if it's just thinking about scoping for a project and kind of narrowing your focus is a big part of it. So happy to help. Was there another question over here?
Yeah, can you just go back one more slide so I can get that date again? Sorry.
Yeah. So one thing that I will mention too that I didn't bring up earlier is that because there's no exchange of money, it's just time, we don't necessarily have the same kind of contract requirements or anything like that. It's a little bit more loose, and so we can kind of fit it to the needs of the community. So once you're selected, we'll go through a scoping phase that can sometimes take a couple months, and it can take, getting out, boots on the ground in the community, and then coming back to say, okay, we can commit to this and this and this, and you've got to help on this part and this part, because we're not here to replace consulting services fully, just to really help you steer your ship. And so Betsy has this great saying, and it is, we can match the energy that your community puts in. So that's a way that we like to think about it too. Help each other out. Danny.
Will this PowerPoint be available?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll share the PowerPoint, and I think there's a QR code back here, so you should be able to access all the materials. But if you have a hard time finding it, email any of us. Happy to send it out. So, yeah. All right. Okay, so last slide, and then you're all free to go about your days. So we had a question earlier about Salesforce and how it was being kind of wonky. My number one advice to you from experience that made me almost want to cry, maybe I did cry, no, just kidding, but write all of your work in a Google Doc or a Word doc. Don't do it in Salesforce. Just don't do it. Put it in a Word doc. That'll help you review it, save it, go back, look at it again, really tweak it, refine it, get it to a good point before you submit it. Salesforce can, especially on deadline days, the volume of the site can really bog it down. I remember calling Patrick when I was working for Cache County, and I, in a panic the day that it was submitting because it didn't upload all my attachments, and so it's a great system, but on those deadline days, just caution, do it in a Word document. Partners, that's a huge thing. Bring people into the fold. Engage your health department. They're always happy to write letters of support for outdoor recreation. Bring people in, local businesses, user groups, an elementary school teacher. I mean, just build the narrative of what the impact of your project will be in the community. I think this kind of speaks for itself, but proofread, know which grant that you're applying to. If you have any doubt that you don't know which grant to apply to, because there's a full list of them here, reach out. We'll give you the confidence that you're applying to the right grant so you have the best chances of success. And I think one of the big things, too, is unique letters of support. You want to paint a picture of why this is valuable and why it's going to make the lives of your residents or visitors better. So give people time, if you can, lead time to let them really put in their perspective as to why it'll be a good investment in the community. I've done it. I'm guilty of doing this when I've been writing grants. I will send out a boilerplate letter to a bunch of people, and I say, hey, tweak it if you can, but if not, just put this on your letterhead and sign it so that we have your support here. And that, you can get a lot of letters in that way, but I think if you can have really intentional ones, it goes a little bit further with our reviewing committee. So just be cognizant of that if you can, and kind of all the common sense things as you go through. And then lastly, I'll say, if you're unsure if you're ready to get money and do a project, it doesn't hurt to start filling out an application, because they're designed in a way that they start making you have questions about long-term maintenance. We might need to get permission from this property owner or what have you, and guarantee that it's going to be a good project. So take a stab at an application. It doesn't hurt anything, Get those gears turning, even if you're not ready. I love the saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Maybe you kind of fill it out and you're like, we're not quite ready. Go back another year, we're going to be here. The state's been really supportive of recreation, which we're really, really fortunate to benefit from. So we're not going anywhere. All right. Anything else that I'm missing, team? Oh, question in the back.
Can you apply to let's say the UCOR grant and the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think grant strategy is something that you might want to consider. If you have 5 grant applications all in UCOR, it might be good to just prioritize 1 or 2. But if you've got these different pockets of money that you're going for with the different grants, you can braid them together. Happy to talk through what that could look like anytime. But that's a great question. Yeah. And also, too, if you've got other partners in the region that are going to be applying for grants, maybe you can work with them and say, hey, we're going to go after this pot if you go after this pot, or just be aware of each other. So, because you don't want to, compete too much, and if there's another, regional priority. So just talking with your partners is always a good thing. Is that it? Evan's clapping in the back. Well, that's a wrap for our grant tour. Thanks, everybody. And you can visit our website if you have any questions or need more materials. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
shining star.